Hey, I got an interim security clearance. Do I need to sign an SF-312? Hi, this is Lindy Kaiser with clearancejobs.com. That's a question that I got recently asking about the SF-312. We did a video update about the standard form 312 a few months back and talked about what exactly that form is. It's basically a non-disclosure agreement. It's one of the 3 requirements born out of executive order for those who have access to classified information. Executive order says you must sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to get access to classified information. So that's a bit of a hint as to the answer to this question. Do I need to sign an SF-312? If you have access to classified information, if you're granted an interim security clearance so you can access classified information, yes, you need this to sign the form. The SF-312 can get a little wonky because it's signed by both government employees and contractors. Again, it's supposed to be a disclosure agreement signed, a non-disclosure agreement, not a disclosure agreement, a do not disclose agreement, signed by both government and contractors. The form can get filled out at different times in the process, so it's not always signed at a specific time, I find. Also, sometimes companies will provide it to their employees or notify their employees of that about it and then allow them to read through it and think about it. I've never had a candidate come back and say, hey, they can't sign the NDA. I think that's a serious red flag. It's going to be an issue with clearance eligibility. But there certainly could be, in some cases, a distinction where a person has been granted a security clearance but not signed the SF-312 yet because they haven't actually gotten access to classified information. So I have heard about that lag in signing an SF-312. So if you're a security clearance holder, somebody who's been granted an interim security clearance, you know, hey, I have an interim favorability. Why hasn't my employer asked me to sign the SF-312 yet? If you don't actually have access to classified information yet through your position, if you haven't been badged or credentialed, there could be a lag time. So it's not necessarily something to be concerned about if you haven't signed an SF-312 yet. If you are currently have access to classified information or facilities and you haven't signed an SF-312, that's when it's time to contact your security officer and see about that. We just had the announcement last week, the results of the Department of Defense 45-day review following the airmen to share alleged leaks of classified information through Discord. Some of that includes tightening up security protocols, who has access to classified information, security training, better security training, which is tied into the SF-312. A lot of times that's accompanied with training and information about the penalties for disclosing classified information. So my guess is there could be kind of an uptick now in saying, hey, let's make sure all of our employees that have access to classified information have also signed an SF-312. It's a pretty straightforward way to document and say, hey, we've notified our employees about their requirements. We've done some training around the security clearance process and what it requires. And again, we have this documentation to prove it. So if you don't know if you filled an SF-312, we'll link to the form here in the video notes. It's worth taking a look, making sure you have, and it's okay to follow up with your security officer and say, hey, is this something, I got my clearance a while back, I can't remember if I signed this. My guess is your security officer is probably going to be doing the same checking on the back end on their side and making sure that they have signed SF-312s for all cleared employees. So again, if you have access to classified information, you should have signed an SF-312 or a non-disclosure agreement. For more about the SF-312 and other really exciting security clearance forms, visit us over at clearancejobs.com.